welcome back to another edition of Poi N Soy podcast, Team Huddle. I'm Jalen Holston, and with me as always is Nolan Chang, Keone McKeague, and Jared Shirai. Boys, how are we doing today? Alive. We've all made it, right? Jeez Louise. But yeah, on Team Huddle, we talk all things volleyball as coaches and members of the volleyball community and all that kinds of good stuff. So we usually like to get the show started, as most of us are active coaches in here. We'll do our coaching check-ins from the week of recording this episode. Jared, we'll start with you. We've got some updates and stories, perhaps, from your week of coaching and whatnot.
Let's see. Tuesday was our first, my JV and my Frost Soft team, basically, or my two JV teams. Yeah, we got our first league win against Shane Beatty and against Bosco.
Hey,
so
suck it,
and then
Shane.
we went to suck it, Shane.
Get wrecked, Shane.
And then we go to Wednesday where we got basically manhandled by Modern Day. So yeah, that was a great turnaround. But our varsity team's in Hawaii, which they did pretty well. I think they went 2-1 the first day, lost the first bracket, so they got pushed down to consolation, I think, and then they ended up winning the consolation bracket out. So it's a good win for them there. I don't have too many fun stories. Just high school kids being high school kids and trying to get them to compete, and that's pretty much it. But yeah.
Indeed. Well, what a sudden turn of events. It was so high, and then Mater Day came in and said, "Excuse me, it's time for you. It's time for you to. Yeah. It's time for you to sit down, good sir." Yeah. Oh man, Nolan, how was your week of coaching, my dude? I mean, I know you got the back still,
but I am planning to return. I think next weekend for the tournament on April 1st. I'm pretty well enough to drive, I think so, and then just gonna give it a whirl and see how it goes. I'm assistant coaching for
a lot of sitting,
team anyway, so I'll be sitting and just kind of yelling from my bottom, like, "Hey, do better." That's it. But all in all, that's how we do it.
Rock and roll. So boys had a good week for me. We won our season and home opener in 5, big thriller. And then we lost to a team that I do feel is not as good as we are in 4 on that Thursday. But tournament was good last weekend. The boys ran through our first match for gold bracket, and then we lost in 3 in the championship. So, I mean, it was a good turnaround from the lows of Thursday night to the highs of the weekend. So
that's gorgeous.
Good stuff all around. You know what I mean? But we watched a coaching video in the Discord. Perhaps I'll send a link down below whenever our editor, Mr. Keone, can get into it. And boys, we all have our various opinions. It is specifically, and I do want to mention names because this show I feel like is a good format to hold people accountable as coaches and where we can improve and whatnot. There's a
drama. Let's go.
Oh yeah, we out here to start drama, dog. Big drama. But Jim Moore is in this video. I think he still coaches at Oregon, if I'm not mistaken. And it's demoing a drill for one of his practices. And there's some verbiage in there, and there's some things that he's saying that I don't agree with, but I wanted to go around the horn and get your guys' opinion on this drill and all that kind of stuff. So Nolan, when you watched the video, like what were some things that stuck out to you as far as his coaching style and whatnot?
Obviously, in comparison to a college coach, I am insignificant in some manner. You know what I mean?
Right.
He is coaching at that next level for a reason. But what I did notice, and I do see this a lot with a lot of coaches that I've been around or coached against, whether it's in club or back when I was coaching in high school teams, there's a difference as a coach between telling the player what's wrong and telling them how to fix what's wrong. I felt like this drill was very fast-paced, and I don't know if it was just because the coaches didn't have time to kind of settle in with a player and correct a movement or a technique or a position, but it felt more like, "What are you doing? You can't be there. You're not supposed to be there," rather than, "Hey, remember, for the drill, you should be here, location, whatever," things like that. All it takes is rephrasing your sentences, how you're yelling it out. I don't know how many times this team has done this drill. I don't know
Right.
if this is, you know, the 100th time they've done it, and by now it should be muscle memory for them. And he may be just kind of straight up tired of correcting them and telling them how to fix it. And it's more of just giving them those verbal cues saying, hey, you're doing this wrong, or you can't do that during this, or whatever it may be. But that's really the main thing that kind of stood out to me, just from a coaching aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Keone, you saw it, I hope, and watched it. I know as a coach yourself and whatnot. What did you take away from this little clip of the video? What were some things that stuck out to you in this very specific situation?
My first question was there context for the clip? Did it kind of...
It's supposed to be demoing a drill that Jim Moore likes to use at Oregon.
Gotcha.
That's really all.
Okay.
It's from the how to, like,
so it wasn't
Art of
like it
Coaching
wasn't
Volleyball
posted
website.
as... It wasn't posted as a controversy or anything. It was
No.
No,
I saw it on the Art of Coaching
Yeah.
Volleyball page, and it just kind of was like, I had some things in my mind, so I'm sure you got some of your own.
It's funny because I've had sort of the full gamut of coaching styles throughout my entire career. I think initially when I started playing volleyball back when I was a kid, my coach was very old school. He was still, I mean, in Hawaii, it's a little bit different, I think, than most other states, but he was very, very, very much so on that sort of, not berating, but he was old school. He said a lot of things that
Tough
probably,
love.
very, very tough love, considering we were literally in elementary. So there was that. And then as I kept playing, I kind of had like more of a nurturing coach, somebody who actually kind of went out of his way, pulled aside on the side and kind of did things like that. Then I went back to kind of a little bit more of a hardcore coach, was really into the fitness side of it. And then obviously college, I think we all experienced a little bit of Victor, right?
A little bit.
Yeah. Okay, so
a little bit.
So we got that experience with him. Yeah.
Enough to get the idea. Yeah.
And there was, he's a good mix of kind of what I think is old school Hawaii and kind of what is newer school version of that. In general, it's funny because initially when you sent me the clip, I was thinking like, what's so bad about this? Like compared to some of the coaches that I've had, like to me, it was light work in a word. So it was one of those things where I was kind of like, this is like, I guess the thinking for me has flipped a lot, because I think going from that sort of where I was as an athlete to what it means to be a coach nowadays, especially kind of in the PC culture that we're in, I understood kind of, and I think Nolan did a fantastic version of explaining how that newer like sort of thinking goes, where it's like, if you're gonna be that way, have like sort of a goal. And like I said, it's a little bit out of context for me, because like he was also saying like, you don't know, maybe before that he was kind of already saying like, for this drill, you're gonna be here, you're gonna be here, you're gonna be here, and maybe it was like, days and days and days of working on this exact same drill, and it kind of just gets to that point. And I understand that from the coaching frustration side, where you kind of harp the same things, and then if it's not getting through, eventually it gets a little more harsh as you continue to like kind of develop that same thing. So for me, it was a little bit of a lighter non-discussion, I guess, piece, because I did feel like it wasn't necessarily harsh, but it wasn't it wasn't constructive. So I think that there's definitely two sides of it. I was probably riding on a little bit more of the like, I can understand where the coach is coming from, but I do understand exactly. I think Nolan, that was spot on, because I wasn't even thinking that way until you had said it. So for me, it's I've had worse. That's where I was with it when I saw the clip.
Yeah. And just for everybody listening, it's a clip on the Art of Coaching Volleyball. They post like drills that coaches do that are, from big to like, Karch Karai all the way down to, obviously we're talking about Jim Moore today, but like all kinds of coaches for, us to kind of look at in case there's days where we want to try a new drill. Things are getting a little stale for us as coaches. You want to mix things up. So it's a great resource for that. But however, when I was scrolling through, this was a little bit jarring compared to some of the other content that is on there. And as noted, we don't know if this is the 100th time they've done it or if he's doing it on day one. I'm sure that this is probably just a routine drill that they're not having the greatest day on, but we'll kind of work through that as we go. But Jared, go ahead and bring it home and give us that. Oh, never mind.
Just very briefly. Sorry, Jared.
No, you're fine.
Jared.
That this is a D1 college program.
It is.
So there is a level of you need to know what you're doing when you go into the drill as well.
Sure.
And I'm not taking a side between the players and the coaches and how they kind of approach this moment, but like I've mentioned before, if this is a drill they've done before and they're D1 athletes,
you could just have like a little like remember, I forgot what show that was where they would like add points to like certain people in the thing, like just add another point there for there you go.
That's what it is.
Add another point to Nolan right there.
You get a certain level of any sport, and the coaches are there to help hone what you already know.
Right.
So a lot of it could be, like Keone said, taken out of context. But,
I'll say I think my bias is that I'm not coaching right now. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, you guys are all actively coaching. So I think that's where my bias comes in, because I'm thinking more as where I was as an athlete, but I haven't been in the coaching realm for 6 years now. So, I mean, it's a completely different culture that I'm not in right now. So I definitely respect your guys' opinions more on this subject than anything. So
go ahead, Jared. Sorry, I just wanted to add
bring it home.
Note in.
Oh no, you're good. I had to rewatch it because I was like, there was a lot in it that I was like thinking and looking at. Like, okay, make sure it wasn't speaking out of my butt here. No, we talked about it off pod. We talked about it off pod. I'll let Jalen talk about the dysfunctionality of the coaches.
Right.
That we saw definitely a little of that. But yeah, like Nolan said, it's a Division I program. But when I was watching this show, it didn't feel like a Division I program.
Right.
Like, just watching the ball control and everything, and you would think, like, in a little more advanced drill like this, you would think that they would be look a little more clean, I guess I would say. The way the drill was ran, I don't think like you guys said, we don't know if it's the first or the 100th time, but if it was the first time they ran, it literally looked like there was no guidelines. You could do anything you want. You can open hand tip. You can hit a ball wherever you wanted. You could run whatever you wanted. Like, if you were 6'5", you just run a 2-ball in the middle. I mean, the only time I think I've ever heard them coaching was when he was like, why are you running an A or a C when you should be just calling for this, because you got to push it all the way this way and things like that. But to touch on a little bit of the dysfunctionality, it's just like, I coach with Henry. Henry likes to run practices very fast paced. So when he was yelling at his assistants that they got to speed it up, whether a ball was on or not, like, it's at that point where, dude, you're in an arena, just grab that ball and chuck it in the stands for all that we care, right? When he was yelling at them, like, hey, we got to speed up the drill, and he's like, well, it's her turn. I was like, bro, she's shagging a ball. You can obviously see it. Hit a ball at the other side, It's not just you're responsible for your one side. So that was one thing that kind of stuck out to me. The other thing was, like, I think it was, like, the very beginning of the video when I told you guys, I was like, yeah, and we're not cheating because you can have a girl. And he's like, I'm going to watch you guys cheat. And they're like, how are we cheating? And he's like, I don't know, but I'm just going to watch and make sure you guys don't cheat. Like, that dysfunctionality right there.
Ever calling out them cheating after he mentioned that before the drill started.
Right,
exactly.
Like, he did it.
Yeah.
Buddy.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they were more mindful that we can't keep the libero there the whole time to dig a ball.
But in his defense, have you ever said something like that, like, just while you're coaching, you're thinking all the drills and all this stuff, and you ever say something and then, like, you immediately are like, what did I just say?
Yeah. I think we've all done that.
What are you talking about?
Surely we've all done
I
that.
feel like that's one of
Nobody's
that may have
perfect.
been one of those moments.
Usually
where
I'll follow that up by going like, you guys understand the drill? Huh? And if they say no, like, oh, what don't you understand? Because I need a reminder of what I just said to you. Just let me know. What did I say?
Which part did I mess up?
Like,
you tell me.
Part of it, I feel like, was he might have been saying more like you're cheating up or something. I don't know. You know how, like, sometimes you do like a tip drill, and if you're supposed to be further back and learn, you know what I mean? So I feel like it could have been that, but then you said it in that way, and it was kind of like, well, I just got to ride with what I just said now.
Yeah.
No, I think I think they were cheating in the sense of, like, they were leaving the libero there to cover a majority of the court and always pass, and they never set the libero. They only set the libero once on the other side where she hit it in the net, and then he was like, "You got to get that ball over the net and do something with it." And I was like, "Okay, well, I mean, you're a libero, dog. I mean, she's probably like 5 feet nothing." But the last one was the cohesiveness of the assistant coaches. I think one girl, the near side girl, she was ripping balls.
Yep.
she was ripping balls, and the other girl
for
on the other
Jared.
side was just giving like a easy down ball, and I'm just like, I would love to be on that side because I know I'm going to score more points on that side. Because he yelled like 2 or 3 times on the other side, "You gotta take that ball!" And it's like, bro, she's ripping balls, and they're getting down balls over there.
This is a D1 program, Jared.
Yeah.
You handle it.
Well, anyway, in context, the thing that I want to talk about in this video specifically is that because of all the things that we mentioned about how coaching has changed so much, the things that bothered me in this video, dysfunctionality, right? And especially as a head coach, like there's no excuse for me at a Division I program for your practices to look like this, right? And I think Jared hit it right on the head. It doesn't make sense why it looked like it was the first time they've ever done a drill and there was so much chaos. And I know there's drills designed for that, right? But everybody has to be on the same page for it to make sense. Other than that, that doesn't make any sense to me. Number 2 was the verbiage being used to coach his girls. And I think it's an issue that we can kind of branch out into broader as we are sitting as a council of coaches, if you will. There's a difference between being a hard coach, and then there's a difference between that and just being a jackass. You know what I mean? Like the things he was saying in no way made them better volleyball players, in no way helped the continuity of the drill. And the things that his assistant coach were saying are literally just stemmed from him because he is the head coach and he allows that culture to filter down through his staff. And I think the difference between that and being a hard coach is that hard coaches, we demand a lot. We expect a lot. We want you to work hard. We're going to be loud. We're going to tell you when you are unsuccessful, but we're also going to be loud when you succeed as well. I think that's, kind of where that hard coach kind of comes in, where I'm going to coach you up. I'm going to yell. We're going to be loud and very much like hold you accountable, but also not degrade you as a human being. So if we want to expand on that, we can. But those were at least where I kind of took away from the video on that. Like, so Jared, if you want to expand on it a little more, like in your mind, try to separate those two distinctions of like, what is it to be a hard coach? And then what is it to just be, a guy that's just being ridiculous? You know what I mean? Where does that line go?
I think the line goes in the perception of how you come off, I guess you would say, because perception is everything. We teach our kids that every day we're in the gym, how you're perceiving yourself to the audience, to the coaches, and how you try to do the drill. And I think that comes off as a coach, right? The language you use, the body language that you use when it comes to it. Are you like, is it a frustration? Oh my God, what are you doing? Or is it frustration? Oh my God, for the 10,000th time, like we went over this. Hey, like we got to stay wide, work our way in from our base, like something as simple as that. And I think that's the perception of it right now. For me, especially with him, it was just more like he expected it, this, that, and that, and like there was nothing behind it. Like I came off, like you said, more of jackasses than being a hard coach. Being a hard coach is literally demanding, and I think you hit it on the head in the sense of like you're loud for your kids. You're loud for your kids when they do bad, and then you're extra loud when they do great things. And I think being a hard coach in that regard, it is tough love to a certain extent,
But it's
but
not love.
but
And
it's
they know that.
love. I think I like to always tell the kids, we said it a million times in many levels. If don't talk to you, I pretty much gave up on you. If I
Right.
continue to talk to you, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm there, I'm supporting you, and I'm yelling at you, and I'm trying to get the best out of you because I love you, and I know you love the game, and I know you want to play at the next level. So it's like being a hard coach in that regard. I'm going to nitpick, but I'm going to make sure that you understand why I'm nitpicking. And then I think with the way he comes off, it's just I'm the head coach, and I can say whatever I want and do whatever I want, and that's kind of what it feels like when, or at least what it's portrayed to me when I'm looking at it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit on a good point there about that kind of that line you do have to walk as a hard coach, right? And
Mhm.
Nolan said it kind of as we were going there. It's all love, and you have to make sure it is love all the time, right?
Yeah.
You can be tough on a kid,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like you said, I'm the same way. I get perceived as this hard coach sometimes, or more old school in today's climate. But it's because I know what my kids can do and like where they want to go and why they want to be that way.
Mhm.
So yeah, so Nolan, if you want to kind of keep unraveling from where you were sitting during
I mean,
that kind of,
Jared pretty much covered it, but I would say the tough love being a hard coach compared to being a jackass. Being a hard coach, you're gonna call out their faults as needed as a player to a coach relationship. But at the end of the day, like you mentioned, we're gonna cheer for your success, and we're gonna correct what we see is not working correctly or needs help. And I think that's the biggest thing, because a jackass coach wouldn't cheer for your success. You know what I mean? That
Right.
we've all had those coaches.
I think those. I
Naming
think
A
names.
few of them.
like,
yeah.
like not to cut you off, Nolan, but I think
Yeah.
those coaches are the coaches that when things go bad, they yell and then they sit down and they be quiet and they don't say
Right.
anything and they don't coach. And I think that's where you can perceive the line of a hard coach to a jackass coach, because a jackass coach would literally just shut up and not do
Yeah.
anything and just be like,
Like,
okay,
if
well,
my-
you guys have
if
figured
my
out it
team
out. I'm
is-
just sitting here, you know.
My team is up 20 or down 20. I'm still going to be the same exact coach, correcting them on small things, because whether
Just a little
you're-
more frustrated if you're
Yeah.
down 20, you know.
Obviously. Yeah. You know what I mean?
whether you're fighting
big
to
number
carry
in
some
Yeah,
momentum.
today's
that's 20. I was like
sport.
20, bro.
Yeah.
Down 20.
I just
No,
Damn,
God.
Nolan, what are you
God.
teaching your
Fine,
kids?
down
bro?
10. Down
Well, like
10.
maybe you need to be a little harder then.
Hey, man. Hey, I'm just saying.
The game's
but
only
yeah.
go to 21.
Oh no.
I'm just kidding. No. But yeah, that's pretty much all I really wanted to add regarding it.
All right, rock and roll. Keone, if you want to bring it home, I know you know, obviously a little bit removed, but like if you have to walk that line, you know what I mean, saying you want to get back into coaching, like how would you kind of approach that?
Yeah, it's funny because I definitely think that walking that line, especially now, is a little different than it was 10 years ago. When we were playing or whatever, going through it. But I do think that the underlying theme is the same, where you can have a coach that is a hard ass. I mean, we've all had those coaches. But they still have the knowledge and the respect. And most importantly, for me personally, it's that respect factor. Um, I mean, love is definitely, you definitely want the love in there. But for me, it was all about respect. Like, I need to respect you as a coach. I need to respect you as a man, taking on the role, or woman, excuse me, or whatever. And I want that respect factor between the coach and the player there. So when somebody's telling me something, constructive, or even if they get frustrated with me, I can respect their opinion if it's somebody that I trust in that way. I don't think it comes off the same when it's somebody that you just absolutely don't respect. And I think it shows when a coach has the respect from their players. It shows when a coach coaches that way. And I think for me personally, that's how I go about garnering the trust from my players, is just garnering their respect, letting them know, like, I may get to a point where I'm frustrated with you if we're doing, something that I don't want you to be doing. But as long as we keep that respect factor, where we can keep an open line of communication between the two of us, and we can constantly learn from each other, because at the end of the day, and I think Jared said that in the last pod, where that's something that's super vital, is keeping an open line of communication between coach and player, understanding that as a coach, you're still learning, you know what I mean? Regardless of how long you've been doing it, or whatever stage you got to, you are learning. Every single day, you're taking that chance to learn. So for me, it's all about respect, as long as, you're keeping that. And, for this particular instance, he is, one of those upper echelon type of coaches. He's up there. So hopefully this was just kind of a bad moment for him, and he, makes it, gets a little bit better, on another day. And
the comments don't help below the video either. Like,
Yeah,
all the coaches are like,
exactly.
"Hey, yo, man, like, what are you doing? This guy's got a job? Like, what?" But yeah, I'll kind of round out with my point here, and then I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate, because we have mentioned that that he is a Division I coach, and like what those expectations are, right? My thing is accountability for what you are, right? Especially as head coaches. That is something that I made a very personal goal for this season of boys, for me, is to hold myself accountable for what I'm saying. So we lost on Thursday, right? In 4 sets. And that next day, when we were doing film before we left for the tournament Friday night, I had to take, the hard pill, and I had to apologize to my team for basically not sticking to who we are as a team. Like, I have a lot of really athletic kids. We have great jump servers, we have good setters, we have good liberos, etc. And during the course of that match, we had missed a lot of our jump serves because we're kind of doing that John Speraw philosophy of high risk, high reward. We're going to serve tough and, kind of run out the gym that way. So I had, I fell into the trap of what the other coach that I was coaching against is, which is much more conservative. They're just going to pop the ball in and kind of do a war of attrition with you, right? And so I had to take that L as a coach and be accountable and say, I apologize. Like, I know we missed a lot of serves in set 2 and 3, and I pulled it back in set 4. Never happening again. We're going to have nights like that. We have to work through it, and we have to just become more efficient with how we do what our philosophy is. Like, we are a physical volleyball team, and that means if we've got topspin jump servers, we are ripping them no matter how many we miss, how many we make, like that kind of thing. And for me, it doesn't seem like there's accountability on his end from, at least from where he's standing on, of letting a good developmental culture go through his staff and his system and what he's got going right now. So that being said, he is a Division I coach. That is currently one of the highest positions you can be in as a head coach, next to Olympics and, JOs. Maybe you do a professional stint here and there. Does that excuse his behavior and how he's developing that culture and how that's been in the small clip that we saw? Obviously, like, I've seen other clips of him coaching a similar way. But like, does being at that high level excuse you from having to make that choice of being a jackass versus being a hard coach? You know what I mean? Say, Keone, I'll just swing it right back to you if you want to open up that can of worms.
You know what sucks about it is, at the end of the day, winning trumps everything, right?
Sure.
Especially when it comes to these D1 programs, because at the end of the day, like, record is really all that matters. And I don't want to say it excuses him at all, but I will say that the system probably will excuse it because he will bring success to the team. And that sucks because I don't think that's right, but I do think that's what happens. I mean, if I'm keeping it a buck and being realistic, as long as he's successful, the program will probably, turn their cheek and kind of look the other way when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
As long as he doesn't go past a certain, point. And I think we know that there is things that if he does say, he's obviously, especially in cancel culture, it'll take that, completely out the door anyway. Or if he does something physically or whatever it might be, that obviously those things will nix everything that I just said. However, I do think that because it hasn't yet crossed that threshold, they'll just look at it as, I mean, he's winning, so whatever, So and it's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yeah, and it's not to undermine what Jim Moore has done at Oregon. Like, they were nothing before he got there. So let's make that very clear. What I'm bringing up is just like, even at the highest level, is that, obviously there's a lot of ways to win. There's a lot of ways to improve your program. Are we not in a state as coaches where we can evolve, right? And not have to be such stuck in our ways to where, I mean, you look at a guy like Russ Rose, he's more of what I would categorize as a hard coach. He holds his players accountable. But never in my life have I seen a clip or anything like that of Russ Rose where he said something so kind of asinine like what we see in this video, nor was there any dysfunction in his staff. And he's obviously one of the most legendary coaches to ever do the game in the women's side, right? And there's, male coaches that have been the same for the men's side, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where I'm like, I don't feel like there's an excuse to be this immature as a head coach, even at the Division I level, because you can win in so many other ways. You know what I mean? So, Jared, I don't know what your thoughts are on maybe like this subject that we've stumbled into.
It's funny that you brought up Russ Rose because that was the kind of where I was going to go with it. Because Russ Rose, he's like one of the best coaches in NCAA history, right? At Penn State, and he just holds his players to a whole different accountability. He is a hard ass. So if you're not doing something right, get out of my drill. Give me a new middle. If you're not working hard in the gym, get out of my gym. Like, don't waste my time. Don't waste your other teammates' time. Like, that's being a hard ass. And like coaches or whatever, like hey, it's your program. I'm with you. Hold them to the same accountability. So when they're not doing their job, they jump on them the same way. But yeah, I mean, I think you hit the head on when you said the dysfunctionality of the coaching staff. Like the because it started from Jim at the top and his borderline jackassishness, right?
Yeah.
And so the coaches kind of follow in that regard. I mean, I think that at the D1 level, you it's hard because like you coach people in different ways. People react to different things, but the culture that you want to bring is always that high level culture. You look at the national team level.
Right.
You watch Karch. I mean, yeah, he has the best players in the United States, but Karch talks to them like people. Like
Right.
he can
Yeah.
get hard on them, but he talks to them like people. And I think like Keone pointed out, the biggest thing is a respect factor. People respect Russ Rose because they know what kind of like program they're getting into. People can respect Karch because he's probably the GOAT, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and things that come out of his mouth, like literally he teaches the right way. Same thing with Spara, same thing when Alan Knipe was there. I mean, you go
Right.
down the line of USA coaches, they're USA coaches for a reason. And if they're expected to coach it like that at the highest of levels, then why shouldn't you be doing it at the Division 1 level?
Yeah.
If you want to be a elite athlete, play Division 1, play in the Olympics, play on the national team, play for some Pan Am team, whatever. Um, you have to train the same way that these athletes do. You have to be treated the same way these athletes do. If they're not doing it at the highest levels, why are you not doing it at the collegiate level? Why are you not doing it at the high school level? Not even the club level. Like, I mean, I've changed the way I've coached. I'm usually a nice coach, but changed the way I coach a little bit just because I've seen this. Henry's brought it up to me a million times. So he's really changed the way I look at the game, the way I look at my coaching, the way I look at how I interact with the kids, and the standards that you hold them to. Like, do you want to hold them like, oh, because it's high school, you can get away with it. Because it's college, you can get away with it. Or do you want to just say, hey, flat line across the board. They use gold medal square for every statting and everything. We're gonna treat you just like the men in the national team gym is working, or the women, and if that's the type of player you want to be, great. If not, don't, and you don't want to get on board, don't come crying when you're not getting playing time, because this is the standard, and
Yeah.
that's the hard ass standard. It's not being a jackass, it's just being the real truth. Because if you're a jackass, be like, oh, you can do whatever the hell you want, but you ain't gonna play on my court. I mean, that's, in my
Right.
opinion, that's the
Yeah.
wording that would
Mm.
be more jackassish. And
Yeah.
I think there's, like you said, a super fine line. And Division 1 athletes, there's a difference between old school and new school, and I think Jim Moore can be considered into the old school-ish kind of era. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I mean, the game develops as should you with your coaching staff.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
think that's the biggest thing, the evolution of the game. And I mean, let's be real. We talk about this generation. This generation, you definitely have to coach them in a different standard, in a different light,
Yes.
in a different the way you talk to them. And I think that's where it gets misconstrued. Maybe back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, Jim Moore's video would have been amazing. Like, people would have been, okay, it's just the way volleyball is now. But it's 2020, it's 2023, and you're looking at it and it's like, okay, there's a lot of successful coaches, a lot of successful programs that are showing that they can do these things in a different way, and do these things without having to berate or demean, or like just not even coach. And at some point it felt like he wasn't even coaching. It
Right.
was just
That's yeah.
nitpicking everything that was wrong, and it's like, dude, come on now.
Wrong.
So
Wrong.
Yeah, and his assistants were following right behind it. So it just didn't help the drill at all. And I mean, we are fixating obviously on like a fucking 3-minute video, but like
Yeah.
it's more of a bigger issue of like this is a
yeah,
problem across the board. I think as it trickles down, that I do think we as coaches can definitely take more accountability for. So Nolan, if you want to bring us home on this kind of topic that we broached into, you can take it away, my
Um,
man.
I think the main theme here is just being able to adapt in many of the aspects of coaching. There's always going to be the constant, which is the game of volleyball, which we all love, we all know, and we're going to be providing that information to our players. But adapting to what players come in each year. If it's a D1 coach, you're going to have freshmen, you're going to have transfers coming in, people leaving from the year before. You don't know how they react to your coaching style. You don't know what works for them. You don't know if they need to um, hear you yell at them to make a switch, or you need them to, or they're going to need you to just talk to them and explain what needs to change. Different players, different reactions. And I think as coaches, it's up to us to also make sure we're recognizing we're adapting our coaching style around the players, but keeping our core values as a coach for the game of volleyball constant. And I think that's kind of what we're all going about. Obviously, we know that D1 programs should be the gold standard when it comes to NCAA and the US. So,
Right. Yeah.
all in all, I think he may need to take a little bit of a step back and take a look at how he's coaching and see what can be adjusted. Not saying that everything he said in the video was wrong, but
Right.
you can mix and match it. It can be a mixed bag a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And again, there's definitely things in there that aren't that skate by me, right? Like, hey, you gotta dig that ball. Like those there's some very common, very tough love coaching things that he said in there, but the majority of it was kind of outshadowed by the things that were from my standard of how I run a gym was not acceptable. You know what I mean? So all of those things, obviously we all have our very different styles and whatnot, but ultimately I think we kind of did breach into some good combos and all those sorts of things. If this kind of discussion, this kind of conversation for you as a new head coach or somebody that is coaching right now was interesting, obviously let us know down below in the comment section of the YouTube video if there's a specific topic in coaching that you want us to cover and get our at least insights on. Also, drop a comment on the YouTube videos, send us a message on Instagram, all that kind of stuff. But all that being said,
actually, real quick, because I wanted to drop this for future videos.
Oh.
If you are on the Twitter verse and you do want to kind of get into these conversations, hit us with the hashtag Poi N Soy.
Yeah.
For any conversation you want to have. If you have questions, want to add it to this conversation, perfect way to kind of get us into talking about those things.
Exactly. So we will adjourn this meeting. We covered some very good things, I feel like, in this kind of conversation over the small clip of Jim Moore. But we spoke more broadly into that big topic, which was like, what's the difference between, being that hard coach and then just being an absolute jackass? You know what I mean? So if you want to holler at us, we're going to give you our socials, starting with Mr. Jared Shirai. Where can people find you on the internet?
I'm on Instagram and Twitch at jshirai, JSHIRAI, and on Twitter at jshirai808.
Keone.
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at Kayonee. It's KAYOHKNEE.
And Nolan Chang.
Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at Nolan KYT, NOLAN KYT.
And you can find me on Twitter at Jalen Holston, Instagram at ArtByJalen, and on Twitch at Mogathanos_LGG. We thank you for stopping into Team Huddle. Everybody can get a good break and go grab a drink, and then we'll run it back, keep it going. Other than that, good vibes and love, everybody.
Bang, bang.
Shoots.